Assalamu alaikum, my IGCSE students. Hope all you are doing great. Welcome to Biomentis. Here, your new go-to place for mastering IGCSE Biology step by step. Whether you are just started or revising the exams, you are in the right place. So our unit number 1 here is characteristics and classification of living organisms. So we are moving according to the Cambridge IGCSE Biology for the year 2023 to 2025 and 2026 to 2028. So here is a syllabus outline for both core and extended. So in this unit, the learning outcomes are role of classification, characteristics of living organisms, concepts and uses of classification, and lastly the features of organisms. Here is a classification of living organisms. Firstly, we'll move on to the characteristics of living organisms. So, all living organisms must have 7 characteristics that you can remember by the mnemonics Mrs. GREN. And here M stands for the movement, respiration, sensitivity, growth, reproduction, excretion, and lastly nutrition. All right. Okay, now we'll walk through the definition of all these characteristics. Firstly, here is a movement. So movement is an action by an organism causes a change of position or place. So movement is a characteristics of an organism that need to change their position. Okay, next here is the respiration. So the respiration is a chemical reactions in cells that break down nutrient molecules and release energy. Means that respiration is a process in which the nutrient molecules, that could be the glucose C6H12O6, that is break down to release large amount of energy in the form of ATP. And here ATP is a unit of energy, and this ATP here stand for adenosine triphosphate. All right. Okay. Now let's move on to the next definition. Here is a sensitivity. So sensitivity is the ability to detect and respond to changes in the environment. So sensitivity is basically to detect any change in the environment, and that change could be external or internal. So external change, for example, when you are sitting in the environment where the loudness is too high, that is unbearable for you, so you may change their position. So it means that you are producing the response according to the change. So this is here the sensitivity. All right. Okay, now let's move on to the other definition, that is the growth. So growth is a permanent increase in size. So when the organism is permanently increasing in size, like the plants are increasing in size, so the permanent increase in size is its growth. Okay, now let's move on to the next definition, that is the reproduction. So reproduction is a process that producing more of the same kind of organism. So organisms have ability to produce the same kind of organism. For instance, here is a sperm cells, and these are the egg cells that unite together to produce the same kind of organisms. All right. Okay, now next here is another definition, that is the excretion. So excretion is a removal of toxic materials, and these toxic materials could be urea, uric acid, and all other requirements. So these are the toxic material that need to be excreted from your body, and this process is done by your kidneys. So the responsibility of your kidney is excretion. Okay, now let's move on to the last definition, that is the nutrition. So we all are taking in energy or the materials for our growth and development. So this process is known as the nutrition. All right. Okay, now let's move on to the concepts and the uses of classification. So organisms are classified all the features that they share. So here the definition of species is very essential, and it may ask into the past paper exam for 2 marks. So here is a species. So we can say species is a group of organisms that can reproduce and produce the fertile offsprings. Means a species produces the fertile offsprings. All right. Okay, now let's move on to the sequence of classification. So firstly, here is a kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and lastly the species. Here is a binomial system. So next here is a binomial system. So binomial system is an international grid system in which the scientific name of an organism is made up of two parts, that showing the genus and the species. And here is a second name is a species name, that always written into the small letter, and first name is always the genus name, and that always written into the capital letters. So for example, the scientific name of the human beings is Homo sapiens. So here Homo is a genus name, that always written into the capital letters, and sapiens is a species name, that always written into the small letters. All right. Okay, now next move on to the classification of organisms. So the classifications helps all the evolutionary relationships. So this classification helps to find out the evolutionary relationship between the organisms. Here is evolutionary relationships mean the origin of or the development of the uh, species, as for instance how the species are developed from their ancestors, and which are the characteristics that they obtained from their ancestors. And for this purpose DNA sequence helped a lot to classify the organisms. All right. Okay, now this also had to find out the similarities in the DNA chain, that shows how the closely related two organisms are. Okay. Okay, now let's move on to the dichotomous key, and this is very important from the exam point of view. And this dichotomous key is a tool that is used to identify the organism based on a series of questions about their features that they share. Okay, so here is a feature of an organism, and these are here the organisms. So you have to identify the name of the species according to their features. So firstly, feet with the 3 toes. So in the limb number A organism, you may observe there is no 3 toes. So toes with 5, feet with 5 toes. Yeah, here is a 5 toes. So 5 toes asking you go to 3. So here when we are moving, go to 3. So when we are moving, go to 3, spikes along back. Now I suppose here, yeah, these are the spices along its back. So spices along its back goes to the 5. So blunt rounded head. So here you may observe it also has a blunt rounded head. So the name of the organism is Ambilus cristatus. So we'll write A here. So in this way you can fill out the dichotomous key. So at this point, if you have any question regarding this, you may ask into the comment section. Okay, now let's move on to the features of organisms. For the features of organisms, we have the 5 kingdoms, in which the first kingdom here is kingdom animals. For example, here is a cat. So the characteristics of the cats is all the cats are the multicellular, means they have their body containing the many cells, and they also have a cells having the nucleus but no cell wall. They also don't have a chloroplast. because animals do not make their own food. They only depend on the organic food by making the other living organisms. Okay, now let's move on to the plants. For example, the cactus plants here. So all the plants also are the multicellular. They also have a nucleus, cell wall that is also made up of a cellulose and often contain chloroplast, because plants can do the photosynthesis, and plants also have a root, stem and the leaves. Okay, now let's move on to the fungi. For example, all the mushrooms are the fungi, and mushrooms also are a multicellular. They also have a nuclei. They also have cell wall, but this time their cell wall is not made up of a cellulose but an another chemical component, that is the chitin. They don't have a chlorophyll, and they also feed by the saprophytically or the parasitic nutrition. Saprophytically means they can feed on the dead decaying organic matter. Okay, now let's move on to the prokaryotes. For example, the bacteria. So all the living organisms are the unicellular, single celled. They don't have a nucleus. They also have a cell wall, and their cell wall also this time not made up of a cellulose but another chemical component, that is the peptidoglycan, and they don't have a mitochondria. And here you may observe the bacteria. Okay, now next here is a prototist. So all the kingdom protista and kingdom protoctista having the example the paramecium. So all the living organisms are the here the multicellular or the unicellular. So in the kingdom protoctista, both type of the living organisms are here. The first one here is a multicellular and second one here is a unicellular. They also contain a cells having a nucleus, but this time their cell do not have a cell wall or chloroplast, but they can feed by the photosynthesis, and they also feed on the organic matter that made by the other organisms. All right. Okay, now let's move on to the vertebrates. So for the vertebrates, here is the class fish, and class fish having a scaly skin. They also have a gills and the fins. Next class here is the class amphibians. So class amphibians having a frog, toads and the salamanders. They all are the amphibians. So the vertebrates having the moist scale skin. They also laid eggs into the water, and their larva tadpoles also are living into the water. So when they become adult, they live onto the land, and their larva also have big gills, and when they become adult, they also has the lungs. Okay, now let's move on to the other class, that is the class birds. So for the class birds, the vertebrates also have a feather. So here you may observe they also have a feathers. Next here is a forelimb. So when their forelimbs becomes their wings, and they also lay eggs within their hard shells, and they also have the endothermic. Endothermic means they have the ability to maintain their internal temperature. So their internal temperature always remain constant. Okay, so they also have a beak. Next class here is a class reptiles. For example, here is a snake. So class reptiles are the vertebrates with having the scaly skins. So they lay eggs within their rubbery shells. Okay, next move on to the class mammals. So class mammals all are also have the vertebrates with the hair. They also have placenta. They feed on the milk from their mammary glands, and they also are the endothermic. They also have the diaphragm having the heart, four chambers. Heart has a four chambers heart, and they also have a different type of the teeth. For instance, incisor, canines, premolars and the molars. Okay, Next phylum here is the Arthropods phylum, and in the all vertebrate invertebrates are included. So invertebrates are those organisms that don't have a backbone. So all arthropods have three standard features. The first one here is they are exoskeleton, they having the jointed legs and the segmented body. The first one here is the insects. For example, here these are the bees. So arthropods here, the three pairs of the having the three pairs of the jointed legs and two pairs of the wings. They also breathe through the trachea, and their body is divided into the head, thorax and the abdomen. Okay, next here is the crustaceans, for example the crabs here. So here you may observe they also have a more than four pair of the jointed legs, but their body is not divided into the millipedes or the centipedes, and they also breathe through the gills. Okay. Okay, now let's move on to the arachnids. Arachnids, for example, the spiders. So arthropods having a four pairs of the jointed legs. So here you may observe the arthropods, including the arachnids, having the four pair jointed legs. They also breathe through the gills, and their gills also known as the book lungs. So arachnids having the book lungs. Okay, now let's move on to the myriapods. So for example the centipedes. So here is the centipedes. Their body contain many segmented, and each segment has a jointed legs. All right. Okay. Now let's move on to the classification of plants. So in IGCSE Biology, the plant kingdom is classified into the ferns and the flowering plants. And this kingdom is classified into the ferns and the flowering plants. So first one here is the ferns. So plants with the roots, stems and the leaves. They also have a leaves called the fronds. So the leaves of the ferns is also known as the fronds, and they also produce by the spores. Next here is a flowering plant. So plants with the root, stem and the leaves. They also reproduce by the means of flowers and the seeds. And their seeds are produced inside the ovary or into the flower. And here is a very important difference between the monocots and the dicots. So monocots are those has the one cotyledons, and dicots having the two cotyledons. And here you may observe the floral parts into the tree arrangement into the trees, and while here in the dicots the floral parts arrangement into the fours or fives. Next they have a parallel veins, and dicots are the net-like leaf venations. In the monocots the pollen grain has a one pore or furrow, while in the dicots the pollen grains has a three. Next here is for the monocots. In the monocots the vascular bundles throughout the stems like their ground tissues, and while here in the dicots the stem vascular bundles are arranged in the ring. Okay. Now here is a viruses. So basically viruses are not considered to be part of any classification system, because viruses do not consider to be being living things. And what are the viruses? Viruses are the non-cellular infectious entities that either contain DNA or RNA that is enclosed in a protein coat and reproduce only into the living cells. And here is the structure of a virus is that containing the enveloped protein, and here is an enveloped, here is its viral genome, here is its nucleoplastid, and here is its viral integument. Okay. So that was unit number 1 of IGCSE Biology, the foundation of everything. Understanding these basic ideas will help you tackle more advanced topics easily. If this video helped you, don't forget to like, Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a topic. I will uploading regular videos covering every chapter, past paper tips and revision strategies. Let me know in the comment which topic do you want me to cover next. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.